The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it wasn't too long ago that Democrats and Republicans on this committee together agreed to undertake a 16-month investigation into the anti-competitive practices of big tech companies. I represent many of them in Seattle, and proposed bipartisan legislation, which actually passed this committee, to restore fairness and competition for consumers and small businesses. That included the American Choice and Innovation Online Act, or ACOIA, which included similar common sense structural solutions to what the EU included in the Digital Markets Act. And it was a real recognition that these big tech companies are squelching competition and innovation, and that hurts consumers. It's a big turnaround then that suddenly the Republican majority wants to do something as absurd as use trade negotiations to help bolster big tech in Europe when EU has undertaken the very smart solutions that fight back against big tech monopolies and protect consumers and small businesses. Maybe it's linked to the fact that these big tech companies are now pouring money into Donald Trump's campaign funds. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're making all kinds of deals to screw consumers and preference giant corporations in exchange for campaign contributions and a 24-karat gold plaque to Donald Trump, like the CEO of Apple just recently did. It seems to me that the Republican Party has suddenly turned its back on small businesses, on competition, on innovation, and yes, even on free speech, which is apparently the topic of discussion today. In fact, one of our witnesses here claims to represent, one of the Republican witnesses claims to represent small and medium-sized app developers, but his organization gets more than half of its funding from Apple, the very giant corporation that those same small and medium-sized app developers are trying to fight. Make it make sense for me. Now we have this hearing centered around so-called free speech and so-called censorship, not here in America, but in Europe. Well, what about right here at home on U.S. soil, the censorship by the Trump administration, the Republican Party, on anything that they don't agree with? Let's just take a recent example. Ramesa Ozturk, a PhD student at Tufts University, wrote an op-ed in the student newspaper calling for the university to divest from Israel. It was a simple exercise of her First Amendment free speech rights. She committed no crime, she didn't bully or harass anyone, she didn't incite violence towards anyone. Action was totally peaceful. And yet, what happened? In March, the Trump administration revoked her student visa, sent masked men to kidnap and disappear her, forcing her into an unmarked car, and detained her for 45 days. Professor Kaye, how does this kind of abuse, utilizing the immigration system, in this case for now, can extend to U.S. citizens, to green card holders, to anyone else, how does this hinder the free speech rights of all Americans?
Well, we've seen already that American citizens have been caught in the enforcement of immigration laws over the last, and outside of the immigration laws over the last several months. But I think we can look at it from two perspectives. I mean, one is it's a clear violation of a student's free speech right, as you just explained it, when they're detained and set up for deportation solely because of an op-ed that they wrote. But it's also an intimidation for anybody who would write anything further. Anybody who's in that same kind of visa situation now is not going to be writing that op-ed. And that's not just a harm to them. That's not just chilling their speech. That's also a harm to all of us who would benefit from hearing those kinds of views.
In fact, right now, the Trump administration is reviewing all social media of visa applicants to see if they've posted any anti-Trump or pro-Palestinian sentiments. How does that affect our free speech rights?
Well, it's the same answer. It's a deterioration of our public debate in this country. It's exactly this kind of, I think that Mr. McClintock had said before, putting side by side different ideas And that's an interference with that.
So quickly, another example. In June, a Spanish-language reporter named Mario Guevara was live streaming a gathering of Americans protesting against Trump's immigration policy. The police arrested him on bogus misdemeanor charges that were later dropped. A few days later, he was detained by ICE. Now we've got a government that arrests a student for writing an op-ed, filters the speech of visitors, and arrests a journalist for covering a protest. How does that compare to free speech practices of other countries?
Well, it does compare with authoritarians who regularly use law enforcement in order to transform journalism into a crime. This is a major global censorship problem, and we're seeing it in Georgia. And we see it in this context that is not just a one-off. It's part of, I think, a systemic approach to a free media in this country. That's one, and perhaps the harshest example, because I understand that the journalist remains in detention, but it's part of a systemic approach, I think.
Similar to Russia and China, places like that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. I have some unanimous consent requests.
Do you want to go now, or do you?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Open Markets Institute.
Without objection.
Another one, a letter from the Tech Freedom Association raising concerns with the FTC's inquiry on censorship.
Without objection.
And a final one from I think it's the App Association, and it's titled, Apple is top funder of lobby group that says it represents small developers.
Yeah. Without objection. If I
And
could,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have one more here.
okay, go right ahead.
This is an article entitled, The False Choice Between Digital Regulation and Innovation.
Without objection.
Thank you, I yield back.
Quickly, Mr. Reed, is your association fighting Apple?
Pardon me?
Is your association fighting Apple?